The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet suburban streets. Alex Costner stood at the gates of his new school, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, his first day at another high school, another town, another attempt to outrun his past. The weight of the world seemed to settle on his shoulders, the fresh start he hoped for feeling more like an enormous burden. He had always hated being the new kid, but today there was more to it, much more. What Alex didn't know, and what no one could have expected, was that his life was about to take a dramatic turn. While everyone else in the school thought he was just another shy, quiet teenager, hiding behind thick glasses and a hoodie, Alex carried a secret, one that no one could have ever guessed. His last name was more than a coincidence. He wasn't just any student. He was the son of Kevin Costner, the famous actor known for his roles in Hollywood blockbusters. But Alex kept this to himself, not because he was ashamed, but because he had seen firsthand how people reacted when they knew the truth. As he stepped onto the school grounds, Alex felt the familiar sting of being different. It wasn't just the new school that made him nervous. It was the constant reminder of who he was, who his father was, and what that could mean for him here. He had a choice: hide in plain sight or face what was about to unfold, all while trying to keep his true identity a secret. But today wasn't just about him fitting in. It was about something far bigger, something no one saw coming. Stay tuned. You won't believe what happens next. And don't forget to subscribe. Alex Costner stood at the gates of his new school, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced up at the building towering before him, its sharp angles and cold gray exterior making the entire place seem uninviting. A deep breath escaped his lips, the smell of fresh paint still lingering in the air. It was his first day in a new town, a new life. He had moved here with his father, Kevin Costner, to escape the buzz of fame and the life they had led before. But fame, like a shadow, followed them wherever they went. Alex tugged at the straps of his backpack, feeling the weight of it pressing into his shoulders. But it was nothing compared to the weight of the eyes that would inevitably fall on him. The school bell rang in the distance, signaling the start of the day. His hands trembled slightly, betraying his nerves. He had hoped to blend in, to be just another student among thousands, but that was nearly impossible when your last name was a household name. The first few students started to trickle through the gates, chatting among themselves, completely unaware of the new arrival standing at the edge. Alex stood motionless, watching them with a mix of awe and apprehension. They looked so comfortable, so sure of themselves. He envied them. The truth was, Alex never quite fit in. Whether it was because of his father's fame or simply his own introverted nature, he had never truly belonged. A few students cast glances in his direction, but none of them approached. Alex didn't mind, it was safer this way. He was used to the feeling of being an outsider, the whispers, the stares, the subtle judgments. But there was one thing that Alex had learned over the years. As long as they didn't know who he was, they couldn't judge him based on his last name. Still, he couldn't help but feel the familiar ache of loneliness settle in his chest as he made his way into the school. The hallways were filled with the hum of voices, and Alex found himself slipping through the crowd, keeping his head down. He was just another face in the sea of students, or at least, that's what he hoped. It wasn't long before Alex found his locker, a small corner of the school where he could hide away for a moment. As he entered the combination, he heard laughter behind him. Turning his head slightly, Alex saw a group of students approaching. There was a boy in the group who stood out, Jake. Tall, with a cocky smile and a swagger in his step, he was clearly the type of student who thrived on attention. Jake's eyes flicked over to Alex, taking in his appearance, the new kid in the hoodie, the shy, reserved face that screamed outcast. "Hey, look who's here," Jake called out to his friends, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "The new kid. Bet he's not even from around here, huh?" The group snickered, but Alex just kept his head down, pretending not to hear. It was always the same, the jokes, the teasing. He could handle it. He had handled it before. But then Jake took a few steps closer, his voice rising with mocking intent. "Hey man, you lost or something? Don't think I've seen you in any of the popular crowds yet." Alex didn't respond. He focused on his locker, the sound of the spinning dial louder than anything Jake could say. He could feel the eyes on him, but he refused to let them get to him. This was just another day, another school. He had faced worse. He would survive this. "Not going to talk, huh?" Jake said, his tone suddenly a little sharper. "I get it, man. You must be one of those weird, quiet types who thinks he's better than everyone else." The words stung more than Alex cared to admit, but he didn't flinch. Jake was just like every other bully he'd encountered in the past. All talk, no substance. He had learned to tune them out long ago, but what Jake didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Alex was different. The boy they were mocking wasn't just another quiet teenager. He was the son of someone important, someone famous, but Alex wasn't here to flaunt his father's name. He didn't want to be the son of Kevin Costner. He just wanted to fit in, to have a normal high school experience. He wanted to be Alex, not the famous actor's child. And if that meant keeping his secret, then so be it. As Jake and his friends moved on, Alex let out a quiet breath, his fingers trembling as he closed his locker. He had survived the first round, but he knew this was just the beginning. He was the new kid, and that meant he would be the target for much longer than he had hoped. With one last look around the crowded hallway, Alex pushed forward, ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere deep inside, he promised himself that no matter what, he would survive this too. As the day wore on, Alex found himself slipping deeper into the routine of a new school, finding his classes, trying to avoid eye contact, and doing his best to disappear into the background. He wasn't used to the whispers that seemed to follow him wherever he went, the sideways glances from students who hadn't yet figured him out. He just wanted to be left alone. But Jake wasn't the type to let anyone go unnoticed for long. By lunch, the teasing had escalated, and it wasn't just limited to the hallway anymore. As Alex walked into the cafeteria, the loud chatter and clatter of trays didn't ease his nerves. He scanned the room for an empty seat. He had learned by now that sitting alone was safer. It minimized the chances of drawing unwanted attention. He spotted an empty seat at the far end of the room near the windows. It was tucked away from the rest of the students, hidden in plain sight. Perfect. Alex made his way toward it, hoping to make it through lunch without incident. But as he approached the table, he saw a girl sitting there, a quiet, unassuming figure with dark hair and oversized glasses. She didn't seem to notice him at first, engrossed in the book she was reading. Alex hesitated for a moment. He could go somewhere else, but something told him that she wouldn't mind sharing the space. So, taking a deep breath, he sat down. The girl looked up from her book, her brown eyes meeting his for a brief moment. "Is this seat taken?" Alex asked, his voice quieter than he intended. She smiled softly, shaking her head. "No, go ahead," she said. "I don't mind." "Thanks," Alex replied, offering a small smile in return. He could already feel the weight of the day lifting, just a little. It wasn't much, but for once, he didn't feel completely out of place. They ate in silence for a few moments, and Alex found himself stealing glances at her. She wasn't like the other students. She wasn't staring at him with curiosity or judgment. She just seemed normal. After a few minutes, she spoke again. "You're new, right? I haven't seen you around before." Alex nodded, surprised by her directness. "Yeah, I moved here recently. Just trying to get used to everything." "I figured," she said, not looking up from her book. "I don't usually talk to people much, but I noticed you sitting alone. I get it. People can be kind of, well, people." Alex couldn't help but smile at her words. "Yeah, I guess I've gotten used to it." "Everyone has their own reasons for being quiet," she said, shrugging as if it were no big deal. "I'm Samantha, by the way." "I'm Alex," he said, still a little hesitant. "Nice to meet you." Samantha offered him a warm smile. "Don't worry, Alex, you'll find your place here eventually. It just takes time." For the first time since arriving at this new school, Alex felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe this place wouldn't be as bad as he thought. Maybe, just maybe, he could find some semblance of normalcy. But there was still one thing nagging at him. One thing that he couldn't shake, no matter how hard he tried. The truth about who he was, the son of Kevin Costner, the actor. It was a secret he kept locked away, a burden that only he and his father knew about. The moment anyone found out, everything would change. And Alex wasn't sure if he was ready for that yet. As lunch came to an end, Samantha stood up to leave, gathering her things. "I'll see you around, Alex. Don't let people get to you, they're not worth it." "Thanks, Samantha," Alex said, watching her walk away. For the first time, he wasn't entirely alone. He had made one small connection, and it felt like a tiny victory in a world that seemed to want to push him back into the shadows. But little did he know that victory wouldn't last long. The whispers and rumors were already starting, and soon Alex would find out that Samantha wasn't the only one who had noticed him. As Alex grabbed his tray and made his way out of the cafeteria, he overheard a group of students talking near the exit. Their voices were low, but the words were clear. "Did you hear the new kid? His last name is Costner." "Like Kevin Costner," one of the girls giggled. "That's got to be a joke, right?" Alex froze, the words hanging in the air like a punch to the gut. He hadn't meant for anyone to know, but the whispers were starting, and the secret he had been keeping so carefully was beginning to slip away. The next day, the whispers were louder. As Alex entered the school building, he could already feel the shift in the atmosphere. It was subtle at first, but the stares were there, too many eyes tracking his every move. His ears burned as he walked through the halls, hearing snippets of conversation he wasn't meant to hear. "I heard his last name's Costner," one voice said, half laughing. "You know, like the actor." "Can you imagine? Really? I thought he was just some weird, quiet kid, but maybe he's got more going on than we thought." Alex's heart sank as he walked past groups of students, their eyes following him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. He had hoped to keep his secret a little longer, to blend in and find some peace, but now it was out. The very thing he feared had come to light, and there was no way to go back. He tried to ignore it, tried to pretend he didn't hear the hushed voices and the pointing fingers, but it was impossible. Everywhere he went, the whispers followed him, growing louder with each passing hour. By the time lunch rolled around, Alex was exhausted from trying to avoid the attention. His usual corner in the cafeteria, the one he had carefully chosen to remain unnoticed, was now filled with a new group of students. They were whispering among themselves, casting glances in his direction, as if waiting for him to do something, to confirm or deny the rumors. Samantha, who had been quiet during lunch the day before, was nowhere to be seen. Alex had hoped that she might be different, that she might stay out of the gossip. But the silence between them was growing, and he couldn't blame her. Who would want to be friends with someone like him, the son of a famous actor, the one everyone was talking about? He stood at the entrance of the cafeteria, feeling the weight of the stairs on his back. He was about to turn around and leave when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning quickly, he found himself face to face with Jake, the same boy who had mocked him the day before. Jake was grinning, his friends hanging back, clearly waiting for something to happen. "Hey, new kid," Jake said, his tone laced with sarcasm. "We were just talking about you. You know, your dad." "Kevin Costner, right?" Alex nodded, trying to keep his expression neutral. "Yeah, that's right." Jake's grin widened. "I thought so. I mean, I wasn't sure, but I figured you're kind of the spitting image of him. But I gotta say, I wasn't expecting you to be so, well, normal." Alex's stomach churned. He had no idea where this conversation was going, but it was clear that it wasn't going to be pleasant. "So what's it like, growing up with someone like that as your dad?" Jake asked, the mocking tone in his voice impossible to ignore. "Must be pretty cool, huh? You probably get all the attention, all the perks." Alex forced himself to stay calm. "It's not like that," he said, his voice quieter than he wanted it to be. "My dad's just a regular guy. He doesn't like the spotlight. Neither do I." Jake snorted. "Yeah, right, I'm sure. But I bet it's a little different for you, huh? I bet you've got some pretty sweet stories to tell, or maybe you've got some kind of fame power you can use to get us some extra privileges around here." Alex felt a flush creeping up his neck. This was exactly what he didn't want. The idea of being treated like a celebrity, being put on some kind of pedestal just because of his father's name, made his stomach twist. "I'm not here for that," Alex said firmly, trying to stand his ground. "I'm here to go to school like everyone else. I don't want anything to do with your jokes or whatever you're thinking." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so you're too good for us now? Just like that?" He took a step closer, his friends now crowding around him, eager to see where this would go. Alex's mind raced. He wanted to walk away, to turn his back on Jake and his friends and forget this day ever happened. But something inside him, something he didn't even know existed, told him that this wasn't the time to back down. Not now, not when things were already spiraling out of control. "I'm not too good for anyone," Alex said, his voice steady, though his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "But I'm also not going to stand here and let you make jokes about me or my dad. So if you've got something to say, say it." There was a tense silence. For a moment, it seemed like Jake might say something else, something even crueler. But then, without a word, he turned on his heel and walked away, his friends trailing behind him, muttering to each other. Alex stood there, his chest heaving, a mixture of relief and frustration swirling inside him. He had held his ground, but at what cost? As the cafeteria slowly returned to normal, Alex took his seat at the edge of the room, his thoughts racing. He had expected things to be difficult, but this was different. It wasn't just the teasing, it was the realization that he could never escape who he was. No matter how hard he tried, his past would always follow him. But he wasn't giving up. Not yet. The next few days passed in a blur for Alex. The whispers only grew louder, and it didn't help that Jake and his friends seemed to be on a mission to make Alex's life as uncomfortable as possible. They followed him between classes, sometimes making pointed remarks about his father, sometimes just staring at him with an air of superiority. Alex kept his head down, trying to focus on his studies and push the noise out of his mind. But it was hard. Too hard. By Thursday, the pressure was unbearable. In the middle of his algebra class, Alex had the sudden urge to get out of there. He couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus on the equations in front of him. Every little sound and every rustle of paper, every pencil tapping, felt like it was adding to the weight on his chest. His breathing became shallow. He was suffocating. Without thinking, Alex stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound echoing through the quiet room. All eyes turned toward him, and the teacher, Mrs. Thompson, raised an eyebrow, her pencil pausing mid-sentence. "Is everything okay, Alex?" she asked, her voice gentle but filled with curiosity. Alex's mouth went dry. He felt the weight of the entire class on him. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks. He had never been the type of person to draw attention to himself, but now it seemed like all eyes were on him, waiting for him to say something, to explain himself. I need to use the restroom," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. He didn't wait for her reply before turning quickly, heading for the door. His shoes echoed in the empty hallway as he walked briskly, desperate for some space, some silence. But even in the hallway, he could still feel the eyes of the school on him. As soon as he reached the restroom, he locked himself in one of the stalls and leaned against the cold tiled wall. His heart pounded in his chest, and he could feel the sweat forming on his brow. He couldn't do this anymore. The constant staring, the whispers, the pressure of keeping his secret, it was all too much. Maybe I should just tell them, he thought, sitting down on the edge of the toilet. Maybe if I tell them the truth, maybe then they'll leave me alone. But then he paused, his hand gripping the edge of the sink as he stared at his reflection in the mirror. He couldn't do that. He couldn't expose himself like that. What would happen if they all found out? Would they treat him differently? Would they expect him to be like his father? Would they stop seeing him for who he was and start seeing him as Kevin Costner's son? The thought terrified him. More than anything, Alex wanted to be normal, to have a life where people didn't look at him with awe or suspicion. He wanted to fit in, to blend in. But here he was, unable to escape his own past. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking his train of thought. It was a message from Samantha. "You okay? You've been acting a little off lately." Alex let out a sigh, running a hand through his hair. He hadn't told her about his father. Not yet. She seemed nice, a little quiet, but Alex wasn't sure if he could trust her with the truth. What if she told someone, What if everyone found out because of her? With a deep breath, Alex typed out a quick reply. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just had a rough morning." He stared at the message for a moment before hitting send. The lies felt natural at this point. He had been lying for so long about his identity, about who he was, that it almost felt easier than telling the truth, easier than facing the consequences of being the son of a famous actor. But in that moment, as the minutes ticked by and the pressure built in his chest, Alex realized something. He was running out of time. Eventually, the truth would come out. And when it did, he would have to decide who he wanted to be, who he was willing to show the world. With a final sigh, Alex stood up, washed his face with cold water, and straightened his jacket. He couldn't keep running forever. He knew that. But for now, he would keep the secret, keep it buried just a little longer. When he returned to class, he found that everyone had already moved on to the next lesson. Mrs. Thompson didn't even look up as he slid into his seat, and the class resumed as if nothing had happened. But in Alex's mind, everything was shifting. He had survived another day, but he wasn't sure how many more he could take. The following days were a blur of classes, whispers, and attempts to maintain some semblance of normality. Alex went through the motions, trying his best to keep his head down and avoid the spotlight. But it wasn't easy. Every time he stepped into the hallways or the cafeteria, it felt like the weight of 1,000 eyes was upon him. Jake and his friends hadn't let up. They were relentless in their teasing, and no matter how many times Alex tried to ignore them, it always felt like they were just a step behind. The laughter, the taunting, it all seemed to follow him, even in his quiet moments. But as the days dragged on, something unexpected began to happen. Not everyone was like Jake. Not everyone was a part of the mob that wanted to tear him down. Slowly, Alex started to notice small, almost imperceptible changes. It started with Ethan, a tall boy with short, messy hair who sat near Alex in history class. Ethan hadn't said much to him at first, but every now and then, Alex would catch him glancing over in his direction. Not in a judgmental way, but more like he was trying to figure him out. One day after class had ended, Ethan approached Alex as he was gathering his books. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice a little nervous. "You doing okay?" Alex froze for a moment, caught off guard by the question. Most people didn't care if he was okay. Most people avoided him or made fun of him, but Ethan was asking like it was just a normal thing to ask, like it mattered. Yeah, I'm fine," Alex said, trying to sound casual. "Just, new school and all." Ethan nodded, his eyes briefly flickering to the ground. "Yeah, I get it. It can be rough at first, but I've noticed you're not exactly like them." He motioned vaguely to the rest of the class who had already filtered out of the room. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Not like who?" "You know, the guys who think they run the place, Jake and his crew, they don't exactly make the place feel welcoming, do they?" Ethan said, his tone a little more serious now. "I just wanted to say, you don't have to listen to them. You don't have to play their game." Alex looked at him, unsure of how to respond. He had heard this kind of talk before, but it never seemed to come from anyone who actually meant it. He had learned to keep his guard up. People who acted like they cared always seemed to change their tune when they realized who he was. But Ethan wasn't done. "I know you're probably thinking I'm just saying this because I feel bad or whatever, but I'm not. I've seen what happens to people like you. You know, the ones who get targeted for no reason. But I've also seen how they back off when they realize you're not going to let them win." Alex felt something stir inside him. It wasn't much, just a flicker of something hopeful. Maybe this time things could be different. Maybe Ethan wasn't like everyone else. Maybe he actually cared. "I don't know," Alex said, his voice quieter than he meant it to be. "It's just hard, you know. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to be normal." Ethan gave him a sympathetic smile. "I get it. Believe me, I do. But you can't let them control your life. You've got more going for you than they'll ever understand." For the first time in a while, Alex felt a weight lift off his chest. It was just a small moment, but it meant more than anything. Someone had actually noticed. Someone had reached out without trying to use him for something. As the school day ended and the students began to scatter, Alex walked home with a little more purpose. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he had made a small connection, and that was a start. The next day, during lunch, Alex found himself looking for a place to sit as usual. His spot at the far corner of the cafeteria was already taken, but to his surprise, Ethan was sitting alone at another table, motioning for Alex to join him. Alex hesitated for just a moment, then walked over, taking a seat across from Ethan. He couldn't help but feel a little unsure, a little hesitant. After all, he was still the new kid. But as Ethan smiled and started chatting about the day's classes, Alex felt that familiar, quiet hope flicker again. Maybe this school wouldn't be as terrible as he thought. Maybe, just maybe, there were people here who wouldn't see him as the son of a famous actor. Maybe for the first time he could be seen for who he really was. The days seemed to drag on, each one blending into the next as Alex tried to navigate the complexities of his new life. The whispers about his last name never quite faded, but with Ethan's quiet support, things had become a little easier to bear. At least he had one person who seemed to see him as more than just the son of Kevin Costner. But even with that small comfort, the pressure continued to build, like a weight pressing down on his chest that he couldn't shake off. Jake and his friends didn't let up. If anything, they were more relentless than before. The jokes, the taunts, the constant attempts to get under Alex's skin, they were becoming unbearable. They had figured out that the rumors about Alex being Kevin Costner's son were true, and they weren't going to let him forget it. One day, as Alex was walking to his next class, he heard Jake's voice behind him, sharp and mocking. "Hey, Costner! You think you're all that just because your dad's famous?" Jake called out, loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. Alex's pulse quickened, his stomach sinking. He could feel the eyes of the entire hallway turned toward him. The whispers started, like a wave crashing over him, the noise growing louder and louder. "You think you're too good for us now?" Jake continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What, are you just waiting for your dad to show up and save you?" Alex kept his head down, walking faster, but Jake wasn't done. He stepped in front of Alex, blocking his path. "Come on, Costner, show us some of that Hollywood charm," Jake taunted, his friends laughing behind him. Alex's fists clenched at his sides, and for a moment he thought about pushing past Jake, about just ignoring him and walking away. But something inside him snapped. The frustration, the anger, the humiliation. It all boiled over in that instant. "Shut up, Jake," Alex said, his voice low but filled with enough authority that it stopped Jake in his tracks. Jake smirked, clearly not expecting Alex to respond in this way. "What? You finally going to stand up for yourself?" "I'm not here for your games," Alex said, his voice gaining strength with each word. "I'm not some punchline for your jokes. I'm just trying to get through the day like everyone else, so leave me alone." For a moment there was silence. Jake stared at Alex, his expression shifting from amusement to something darker. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could get the words out, a voice interrupted. "Hey Jake, you really want to keep going with this?" Ethan's voice rang out, and Alex turned to see him standing just a few feet away. "Maybe you should just let it go. You've been making fun of him long enough." Jake's eyes flicked to Ethan, his jaw tightening. He wasn't used to being called out, especially not by someone like Ethan, who had a reputation for staying out of the drama. But Ethan wasn't backing down. "I don't know what your problem is with him, Jake," Ethan continued, taking a step forward. "But you don't get to pick on him just because he's different. You want to talk about Hollywood? You should know better. People don't have to be famous to deserve respect." For a brief moment, it seemed like Jake was going to challenge Ethan, but then something in his expression softened. He stepped back, shaking his head with a forced chuckle. "Whatever," Jake muttered, waving his hand dismissively. "This is getting old. See you around, Costner." With that, Jake and his friends turned and walked away, their laughter trailing off as they disappeared down the hallway. Alex stood there, his body still tense, the adrenaline of the confrontation still coursing through him. Ethan gave him a reassuring nod. "Don't let him get to you. He's all talk." Alex could feel the tension in his shoulders start to ease. For a moment, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in days. Relief. It was brief, fleeting, but it was there. "Thanks," Alex said, his voice quieter now. "I didn't expect that." Ethan shrugged, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Jake's an idiot, but he's not the only one around here. There are more people than you think who are tired of him and his crew." Alex wasn't sure what to make of that, but he appreciated the sentiment. He had spent so much time feeling isolated, feeling like an outsider. But maybe Ethan was right. Maybe he wasn't alone in this. As the bell rang, signaling the start of their next class, Alex followed Ethan toward the door, his thoughts still racing. The confrontation with Jake had been a wake-up call. For the first time, Alex had stood up for himself, not just for his dad's sake, but for his own. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Things were changing, and not all of it was going to be easy. The spotlight was on him now, and it wasn't just from the whispers or the teasing. The pressure was mounting, and Alex didn't know how long he could keep up the act of being the quiet, ordinary student. But he couldn't back down now. He had to keep moving forward. The days after his confrontation with Jake were a strange mix of relief and unease. Alex had felt a brief moment of victory, of standing his ground. Ethan's support had helped, but the tension still lingered in the air. It wasn't just Jake anymore. It was the entire school, the constant whispers, the subtle glances. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something to happen, some kind of confirmation about who Alex really was. But as the days dragged on, something unexpected started to shift. Ethan became more of an ally, someone Alex could count on. They started walking to classes together, sitting in the same section of the cafeteria. Samantha, too, had started to speak to Alex more often, offering quiet encouragement. It felt good to have these small victories, but Alex still couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before everything would unravel. One afternoon, just as Alex was heading to his locker, he overheard a conversation between two students. "I heard he's actually Kevin Costner's kid," one of them whispered, just loud enough for Alex to catch the words. "Do you think he's, like, embarrassed by it?" "No idea. I'd be embarrassed if I were him. I mean, what kind of life is that?" The words stung, more than Alex was willing to admit. He had heard them before, but this time they hit him differently. People didn't just think he was strange. They thought he was ashamed of who he was, of the life he had, of the father he had. It was as if they had decided who he was without ever really knowing him. He had to face it. There was no escaping it anymore. His secret was out, and the longer he let the rumors swirl, the harder it would be to maintain the facade. If he didn't do something soon, the whispers would consume him. It was inevitable. The school would soon be in full frenzy, and he couldn't keep hiding in the shadows. But Alex wasn't ready to give up just yet. He had learned a long time ago that running away never solved anything. The only thing left to do now was prepare for the inevitable confrontation, the moment when the truth would come crashing down around him. That evening, Alex sat in his room, staring out the window at the fading light of day. His father's voice echoed in his mind, a memory from the past. "You can't control what others think of you, son. All you can do is be true to who you are." Alex had never been one to embrace the spotlight, but his father's words had always stayed with him. He had spent so long trying to hide behind a mask, trying to be something he wasn't. But now, he had to face it. He had to own who he was, not just for his father's sake, but for his own. The next morning, Alex walked into school with a sense of resolve. He knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, but this time he wouldn't be afraid. This time he would confront the situation head-on. The rumors, the whispers, the stares, they didn't define him. He did. As he walked through the crowded halls, he noticed more students watching him than usual. Their eyes flicked to him, then quickly turned away. It was like they were waiting for something, for Alex to do something, to make the first move. But he didn't. He just walked through the halls like he belonged, his posture straight, his steps sure. In history class, Jake leaned over the desk toward him, his voice low and teasing. "Still think you're special, Costner?" Jake muttered, his smirk returning. "You've got everyone's attention now. What are you going to do with it?" Alex met Jake's eyes without flinching. "I'm not here for your approval, Jake. I'm here to get an education, that's all." Jake scoffed, but Alex could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. For the first time, it seemed like Jake wasn't so sure of himself. The power dynamic was shifting, and Alex felt it. He wasn't backing down anymore. That afternoon during lunch, Alex sat at his usual spot, alone for now. He was deep in thought when Ethan and Samantha approached, both carrying trays of food. "Mind if we sit with you?" Samantha asked with a small smile. Alex nodded, his heart lifting slightly at the gesture. "I don't mind. You're both welcome here." They sat down, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Alex didn't feel alone. They didn't care who his father was. They cared about who he was, and that was enough. Maybe this school wasn't so bad after all. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to make it through this without losing himself in the process. But there was still a long way to go. The truth would come out soon enough, and Alex wasn't sure what the fallout would be. But one thing was certain. He was ready. The game was about to change. The day had arrived, and Alex stood in the crowded gymnasium, surrounded by students whispering excitedly about the arrival of his father. His pulse raced in his chest, each beat louder than the last. The truth, the one thing he had been hiding for so long, was about to be exposed to the entire school. Kevin Costner, his father, was here, and there was no escaping it. Alex's heart skipped when the announcement came over the loudspeaker. Mr. Williams, the principal, introduced his father with enthusiasm, causing the students to erupt in applause. Alex couldn't focus on the applause or the cheers. His mind was fixated on the moment his secret would be out in the open for everyone to see. As Kevin took the stage, a wave of realization hit Alex. His father looked the same, strong, confident, effortlessly charismatic. But in that moment, Alex couldn't help but feel out of place. He wasn't just another student now, he was the son of Kevin Costner. No matter what he did, his identity was already written for him. But then something shifted. As Kevin spoke, he glanced at Alex in the audience, offering him a reassuring smile. A silent message passed between them. Alex wasn't alone. His father was proud of him, not for the fame or the attention, but for who he was. Jake, who had been eagerly waiting for this moment, leaned toward Alex after the assembly ended. "So the rumors were true. You really are that Costner's son. What now, huh? You think you're better than the rest of us?" Before Alex could respond, Jake shoved him, his chest heaving with anger. "You think you're special." Alex, finally fed up, stood his ground. "I'm not my dad, Jake. I'm me. And I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not." The confrontation was intense, but it didn't end with a physical fight. Instead, Alex's calm response disarmed Jake. His words carried weight, and for the first time, Jake faltered, unsure of himself. Alex had finally stood up for who he was, and it felt liberating. As Jake backed off, Ethan stepped forward, offering Alex a silent nod of support. "You did good, man." With Jake and his friends retreating, the tension in the air lifted. Alex had won, not because he was famous, but because he had stood tall in the face of fear. His journey of hiding, of pretending, had come to an end. He was free. The aftermath of the confrontation with Jake left Alex feeling more than just relief. It was the first time he had truly stood up for himself. He hadn't fought back physically, but his words carried strength. He wasn't going to be silenced, and he wasn't going to let anyone define him by his father's name. The hallway was quiet after Jake and his friends left, but Alex could still feel the eyes of the students on him. They had witnessed his stand, his moment of defiance. For a second, he wondered if things would ever be the same. Would they still see him as the same quiet, shy boy, or had he finally made them see him for who he really was? "Thanks," Alex muttered to Ethan, who was standing beside him. Ethan smiled. "No problem. You did it, Alex. You're not just the son of Kevin Costner anymore. You're you, that's what matters." For the first time, Alex truly believed it. As the days passed, the weight of the moment began to fade. But just when Alex thought the storm had passed, another surprise came his way. While walking through the hall, Samantha stopped him, her expression more serious than usual. "You're not going to believe this," she said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Jake, he's been spreading rumors, but not about you. About your dad. Confusion washed over Alex. "What are you talking about?" She took a deep breath. "Jake's been telling people that your dad's visit wasn't just for you. He's planning something big, a donation to the school, maybe even a scholarship program. He's been using you, Alex, to get people to listen." Alex's heart sank. Was that really what had been happening? Had his father's presence been more than just a simple visit? Was his father involved in something that Alex wasn't aware of? But then, it hit Alex. Maybe it didn't matter. Jake's lies couldn't change the truth. He was more than his father's fame, and no rumor would take that away. As Alex walked through the school gates that afternoon, he felt a sense of peace. The whispers still lingered, but now they were nothing more than background noise. He had faced the pressure, stood his ground, and survived the storm. No one could take away his identity anymore. He was Alex, not Kevin Costner's son, but his own person. With Ethan and Samantha by his side, Alex knew that the future was uncertain, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it head-on. The past no longer defined him. His journey had just begun,